Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the We Shall Not Sleep podcast. I hope you all are having a fantastic week. Happy Camel Day to anyone out there who may be listening. I just want to say that I so much appreciated all of you tuning into the episode with Pastor James last week. That was such an amazing podcast. If you have not heard it, I would implore you sincerely to take some time to go back and listen to it. It's perfect for the drive time commute and the work and the commute home. Perfect, about an hour and 45 minutes. Just salt of the earth type of stuff. I love Pastor James. He's my mentor, fellow brother for a reason. And we talked about a lot of good things about what we as pastors can be doing to hold each other accountable in much better ways than what we had in the past. So if you haven't had a chance, it's up on our SoundCloud. It's up on every podcast feed, including YouTube. Find more updates. Connect with us on Facebook. We Shall Not Sleep, as well as our email, wsnspodcast@gmail.com. All right. So I gave a little bit of this message this past week at my church, and I kind of want to expand a little bit more on this. This is taken from the book of Matthew, chapter 5. This is the Sermon on the Mount, right after the Beatitudes, when Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt becomes tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men." And that is something that you look at, and it was a speaker, Michael Ramsden, who used to work for RZIM, who actually gave a tremendous sermon on this, because we all know about being the light, because later on, verse 14, Matthew 5 says, "You are the light of the world. The city on a hill cannot be hidden." And he went on to talk about these contrasts between salt and light. You know, light is something that can be seen from far away. It attracts people. You can cover it up, but then it can come right back. It's immediate. The effects are immediate. It's a candle for something. It's something that can be relit. And it goes out. You know, it's just it's a beacon, but it's something that can have an effect, and its intended effect is to be able to shine and be seen from far away and to attract people from the distance, where you are doing something and people come to you and they question, they inquire, you providing hope. Salt, the other aspect of evangelism. Salt, does not matter how close you get it to an object. If it is not in it, it's not going to have its desired effect. So if you salt your food at dinner, it doesn't matter if you set the salt shaker next to your plate. It's useless. It has to be in it. And so for us as evangelists, as ministers who are called to a full-time ministry, Pastor James said this last week on the podcast, that ministry is a particular vocation that does not have a retirement date, right? It does not have an expiration. We don't have the luxury of retiring. Now, many of us have different talents, skills that God has emboldened us and called us to. Teaching, preaching, gifts of service, healing, acts of hospitality. Those are all things that people have differently. Mine just happens to be preaching and teaching, of course, as my role as a pastor. But we're all called to evangelize. Matthew 28, "Go therefore make disciples." Pastor James talked about this too, that the aorist tense, that tense of Greek, there is go. It's not like go in the future, is as you have gone, as you continue to go, make disciples. It's this long walk, long road of evangelism. This idea that evangelism is urgent. We have to be in and we have to be present, but we also have to be willing to take the long road. Live your life consistently. Shine the light. Do not let it go out. Be consistent, because when all other lights fail, when all other things, I think of Lord of the Rings, the beacons of Minas Tirith are lit, that's what I'm thinking about. It's like when all those other lights fail, when the wind blows them out, what beacons are left? What candles are left for people to be guided back to safety? So we have the calling that we are never to give up. We're supposed to be present at all times. So salt, you have to be in it. And then salt, once it's in it, it can't be separated. And so whoever we are called to, from a ministry standpoint, we don't have the luxury of just giving up. I guess I just won't be nice to that person, kind or gentle, respecting, loving towards them. No, good luck getting salt out of food, right? There's no way to get it out. You have to destroy the food. And then finally, you can get to a point with salt, with light, again, that you can relight it. However, the biggest thing about salt, about the what it does, is that once light becomes dull, it becomes relit. You change the batteries, you do something different. But once salt becomes unsalty, it's useless. You can't use it anymore. It's no one just keeps unsalted salt in their cabinet. You throw it away. It's utterly useless. And so for us, well, what happens if, even if we're present in people's lives, we haven't given up necessarily, but then we're giving the wrong message. We think we're giving them a message of hope, but yet we're never talking about Jesus. Like, so what's the point? You're almost going to say, what's the point of any relationship if you're not trying to push someone towards Jesus, right? What is the point of it at all? Like, Pastor James again talked about this, that the idea of the point of the relationship is the relationship itself. What good is it if we're not trying to point people towards Christ? The point of the relationship is to show the face of Christ. Otherwise, it is useless. And that's something that it might be hard to hear, but that what else are we supposed to do? It's an ongoing process. This discipleship making thing is an ongoing discipline. And this comes back to, we are now less than 30 days here in the United States from our general election that happens every 4 years. Pretty much everyone knows about it. The world looks to us to see what we're going to do because we affect so much. And I have been preaching to my church, not politics, but what our response ought to be. You see, there are so many things that can distract us, like the election, for example. These horrible, horrible hurricanes that are going on, the wars in Ukraine, the ongoing fighting in the Middle East. And we look at the news, and it's all negative for the most part. It doesn't matter if it's local news or not. And I'd like to think that a lot of that can be distraction. I don't know. Again, podcast with James last week. This got me going. I have to give him credit. Were we meant to know and be connected about everything, all 8 billion of us, on social media and the internet, where we know everyone's business? I mean, it is my theory that since sin nature and human nature has not changed whatsoever, these things, the sin, the catastrophes, the people not getting what they want out of life have always gone on. It's just whether or not we knew about it. That's why the phrase ignorance is bliss is truthful. And it rings truer today maybe than it ever has to a certain extent because of the amount of knowledge that we have at the fingertips. And then it's the stress of weeding out what's real and what isn't. What's there as propaganda, what isn't. And all of it takes us away from the small world that God has called us to. Because if we are ministers everywhere we go, then our world is our family, our friends, our coworkers, the strangers we have the ability to interact with at the grocery store, the gas station, whatever, shining the light of Christ. And what takes you away? What distracts you from the relationship with your kids, your grandkids, your cousins, your nieces, nephews, extended family, best friends? What keeps you away from that? And if we are present, I mean, I'm sure you've talked to people over dinner and they're just not present, or they're spend so much time worrying because of fearmongers that basically beg for our attention on the internet all the time. What I'm just simply asking is, what is keeping us away from what God has called us to, the world he has put us in? Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow has enough trouble of its own. Absolutely. Well, how much change can we hope to have, or to an effect to have on any sort of change going on internationally? What can we do about the war in Ukraine, for example, except for pray? And if you have the ability to vote for certain people who vote. Yeah, we do that. But I could just get out there on my deck tonight and just scream about certain things, but it's not going to do anything. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't care. I'm not saying we shouldn't pray. I'm not saying we shouldn't research or have debate, dialogue, especially for leaders, about asking genuine questions. That's good. I'm talking about idolatry, fear, worry, stress. Those are the things. Satan uses those things to distract us and to get us off our kilter, so to speak, from the ministry that he has called us to presently. Stay present, be present in the lives that God has called you to be a witness of his kingdom too. It's that simple. That is the call. That is the message of this podcast tonight. Thank you so much for listening. May God bless you. May God keep you.